Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video, and we're actually going to be doing another blast from the past. I know it's been a very long while since I did one, but since we're coming up to Summerslam, I thought I'd revisit another Summerslam. And this Summerslam I'm going to be discussing as a blast from the past is Summerslam 2014. This one was in the year of 2014, as I just said a few seconds ago, and this one had some big matches. It had AJ Lee and Paige for the Divas Championship. It had Seth Rollins versus Ambrose, Stephanie and Bree, their whole saga, and Brock Lesnar and John Cena. My goodness, and I've got a lot to say about that match. So let's begin, shall we? Let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into it. We had a pre-show match, and that was Nostalgia Act Rob Van Dam. He went one-on-one with Cesaro and scored the victory. I don't really have much memory of that match, nor should I. Rob Van Dam is a nostalgia boy. And the first match on the actual show was Dolph Ziggler versus The Miz. And Dolph Ziggler defeats The Miz to become the Intercontinental Champion. Wasn't this The Miz's last actual push before he faded into obscurity until 2016? I can't really remember, because I know Miz faded into obscurity for a while, and then ever since 2016, ever since Maurice came back in 2016, The Miz has kind of been a top guy ever since. So I think this was when he kind of faded into obscurity for a bit, because I don't really remember anything about Miz after this. So Dolph Ziggler, he was getting that big babyface push, because we all remember that infamous Survivor Series match from 2014 where he won for John Cena's team. So yeah, I just can't really remember much of The Miz at this point. I think this is when he faded into obscurity, and then Maurice came back in 2016 and helped him become IC champ, and he's been there, and he's been where he's been ever since Maurice's come back. So technically Maurice, his own wife, plucked him from obscurity, and he's been a top player ever since. Next came Paige versus AJ Lee, and if you guys know, and if you guys have followed my channel for many years, only since 2016 when I started doing reviews, I'm a huge AJ Lee fan, and I never really was a big fan of Paige, so you could kind of see, or kind of tell, that the outcome of this match didn't really make me happy. And that was Paige defeating AJ Lee to become a two-time Divas Champion. And the match was under 5 minutes. It was about 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Yet, Stephanie and Bree got more time than this. The fact that Stephanie and Bree's match got more time than the actual title match kind of tells you how they felt about the championship back then. But yeah, Paige became the champion. Wasn't really a fan. She ended up dropping it like a few weeks later back to AJ Lee at Clash of Champions. So it's kind of like Paige and AJ Lee were like Sasha and Charlotte. They just always traded that title back and forth. So, but you know, not as many times as those two. The match, you know, was okay. The match was okay. I don't really remember it all that much, because I like to try and block out as many of the bad AJ matches as possible. But AJ pretty much carried Paige. Paige was the heel, AJ was the babyface. And yeah, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. There's really nothing I can say. Paige hit the rampage to score the win on AJ. The funny thing is, Paige has never beaten AJ by submission. She never applied the PTO on AJ Lee, which is quite surprising. You would kind of think it would have happened at some point, but it just never happened. Crazy. And then we had Rusev versus Jack Swagger in a flag match. Oh, hated this. I really hated the whole anti-American versus American kind of stories. I just hate these. It might just be because I'm Australian and I don't live in the United States. But God, I just hated these. These were just so... These kinds of things you just saw so often in WWE. Oh, you'd have that foreign heel that hates America. And then you would have that proud American hero, you know, come out and defend their country. I hated storylines when it came about the country of the United States. Even if I did live in the United States, I still would have hated it because it's just so lame. It's just so stupid. I just hated these kinds of storylines. These kinds of storylines are just so lame, so stupid. I just never liked them. You might have, I didn't, and it was always... And the funny thing is, like, crowds would react to these. So these kinds of matches, you know, they do its job. They do its job, I guess, because the crowds are into it. They want to see the foreign heel get their ass kicked. And this is when Rusev was being built up as a dominant monster. This is when Rusev kind of debuted. This is when he debuted. He was being built up. He wasn't United States champion yet. He didn't get that title until November? I can't remember when he won it, but I know he beat Sheamus for it. But yeah, like, I just was never a fan of these matches. Rusev won after 9 minutes. I was never a fan of Jack Swagger, by the way. Jack Swagger, never really a fan of him. I found him really boring. Rusev at the time, I mean, whatever. I mean, he was being built up, so at least I could appreciate that. But, you know, we now know where he is right now and how everything is going for him now in present day. Then we have Seth Rollins battling Dean Ambrose in a Lumberjack match. I don't really remember this. Like, as much as this is a blast from the past, like, some of these I just don't really remember. Seth would win after 10 minutes and 55 seconds. Like, see, this is the problem, right? Like, all these other matches got more time than AJ Lee and Paige. Like, some of these matches were really shit. Like I mentioned with Rusev and Swagger, that was a shit match. Stephanie and Bree, I wasn't really into. Brock and Cena was boring as hell, but yet Paige and AJ couldn't even get 5 minutes, which is such a disgrace, considering that they were the two top stars in the company at the time. But Seth would win the Lumberjack match, defeating Ambrose. Seth was the Money in the Bank contract holder at the time. Then we had Bray Wyatt taking on Chris Jericho. Yes, I know. Very weird, right? Me talking about something involving Chris Jericho. Well, I think a lot of my other blasts from the pasts have Jericho in it, but yes, Chris Jericho was on this pay-per-view, and he put over Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt would score the win. I think the match is really good. Again, I don't really remember it all that much, but I'm pretty sure it was a really good match, because Bray Wyatt and Jericho are really good, talented men. Oh boy, here we go. Stephanie McMahon versus Bree. Bella. Bree mode! I love the Bella twins. As you guys know, I'm a big Bella mark, but God, I just did not like this whole thing with Bree and Stephanie McMahon. It was like a whole storyline about Daniel Bryan being a B+ player. Daniel Bryan had to give up the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, otherwise Brie Bella would have gotten fired, and all this nonsense. And it was just a lame storyline. Like, I get me back then was into it, obviously. Because here's the thing. Me watching this stuff back in that current year was good to me. Because, you know, I was invested in a lot of the stories back then. But revisiting these to nowadays just makes me go, wow, I can't believe I liked this. Like, I love the Bellas. Bree has always been criticized as one of the worst wrestlers in women's wrestling. And This match was given 11 minutes. 11 minutes. This was like Stephanie's last match before she competed against Ronda Rousey in that mixed tag at WrestleMania. This was like the last time she ever legit competed before her match with Ronda. Stephanie McMahon won when Nikki Bella turned heel on Bree. And the Nikki and Bree feud, I absolutely hated. It was absolutely terrible. It was a terrible story. It was just... I know the Bellas were ready for that kind of thing, because I heard us... Because I heard something that they were excited about the idea that they are finally going to feud, like they can have their own personalities. Like, this whole breakup is what started the Bree mode active character and the fearless Nikki. When these two broke up, that kind of started their whole Bree mode and fearless Nikki characters. That's kind of when their own characters kind of started, when they broke up. But funny thing is, they broke up, then 2 months later, they got back together, because WWE knew how stupid it was to break them up, even though there was no Women's Tag Team Championships back then. So Stephanie won due to Nikki turning heel. Then we had Roman Reigns, Roman Reigns versus Randy Orton. This was the longest match on the night and the best match on the show. And yes, it's very crazy to hear me say I liked a men's match more than a women's match. 2 women's matches on the card, and I didn't even like any of them. Yes, I didn't even like AJ's match with Paige. It was way too short. I only didn't like it because it was way too short. So Roman and Randy had a really, really good match. I do remember this match. Randy didn't win. He put over Roman Reigns because, you know, Roman Reigns was Vince's boy. He was being built up to be the next big babyface at the time, so I kind of knew Randy wasn't winning this match. So yeah, a really good match. So we go from a really awesome match to possibly the most boring main event of all time in SummerSlam history. People call this the best main event because of its destruction, but I consider this the worst main event for SummerSlam, and that was Brock Lesnar versus John Cena for the WWE Championship. It was 16 minutes of Brock Lesnar destroying John Cena. That's all it was. That's all it was. 16 minutes of John Cena being squashed by Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar came off conquering the Undertaker's streak that year. And I can understand from a story and a business standpoint, yeah, you would want to do that. You would want to build up the guy that conquered the Undertaker's streak. But this is Brock freaking Lesnar. And you had him destroy John Cena. A man that fans say that buries young talent. Even though he has, but this is the one man that gets accused of doing that the most out of everybody. And yet WWE had John Cena get absolutely murdered in this match with Brock Lesnar. I'm surprised no one said John Cena was buried after this loss to Brock Lesnar, because my god, this was just absolutely pathetic. This was pathetic. I almost felt like I wanted to fall asleep, considering how bad it was watching it back. So there you go, guys. And Brock Lesnar would win. He becomes the new WWE Champion. And this was when it all began. Vince McMahon's finish on giving Brock Lesnar WWE Championships. This was the night where it all began. So there you go. That is your blast from the past. Not the best SummerSlam. Not a good SummerSlam. For me, I think some of the matches like Rollins and Ambrose was okay. I thought that would have been good. I think that was good. I think Roman and Orton was the best match. Stephanie, Bree, AJ and Paige, I wish that was longer. because I feel like that had potential to be a really good match, but they only gave them 5 minutes, which is lame. Bray and Jericho might have been good. I just don't have really big memory of most of these matches. And Rusev and Swagger, shitfest. And yeah, so it wasn't the best SummerSlam. To me, in my opinion, it wasn't the best SummerSlam, especially on the women's side of things as well. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this review. Hit that thumbs up if you guys did enjoy. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below on what did you think of the 2014 SummerSlam. And let me know which pay-per-view or Raw or match you want me to revisit one day in the future. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I will see you all next time.